talking about the for loop in Python. Um, so I have here with me some three dots. That's the best example I can think of why we use the for loop, right? So let's say, for example, you have a list of items, right? It could be different items or similar items, but let's just say you have a list of items, right? And for each item, you want to do a similar task, right? So for example, for this, you want to do the same thing that you're gonna do with this, right? And you want to do the same thing which is gonna do with this. So I mean, with coding, right? Um, it'll be kind of like a very tedious task, especially if you have like 1,000 of these, right? To basically have to, write the instruction for this, write the instruction for this, write the instruction for this, write the instruction for this. And let me give you a practical example, right? Let's say you have a list in Python. Let's say a variable. Let's call this. Oh wait, I have a better example here on the we3 thing. Let's say you have a list of fruits, right? And you want to print out every fruit in this list, right? I mean, you could actually just print out, ignore the notation and all this. I'll explain it later. But I mean, you could just, um, sorry, let me get this pen. You could actually write, a function to print this, print this, and then print this after that, and then print this after that. But then, sometimes when you're dealing with coding, right, you have a list that has, let's say, 1,000 characters, or maybe one that is constantly added, and it becomes very tedious or impractical sometimes to basically have to write it over and over again. So that's where the for loop happens, right? So I'm gonna give you a very an example that simulates how the for loop works like in real life, right? How an example that's kind of like a real life example, I would say, that's so similar to how the for loop works like, right? So I have here with me, it's not a very good drawing, but a fridge, right? So this is a fridge, and now let's say you're preparing a dinner or a lunch or whatever for a group of guests, right? And you want to get all the food in the fridge and set it on this table, right? You want to get all the food in the fridge and set it on this table, right? And you're telling someone to, hey, could you take the food from the fridge and basically just put it on the table, right? Now, it would be very impractical for you to tell the person, hey, can you get this bottle in the fridge and then put it on the table? And then when you're done, can you get this bottle from the fridge and then put it on the table? And then when you're done, get this bottle from the fridge and then put it on the table. It would be basically impractical, right? What you do, I mean, realistically speaking, you just say, hey, for, right? For for every item, right? For every item, for every sorry, every item, every item in the fridge, right? Item in I just call the fridge F, right? I want you to basically do this instruction, right? I want you to do this instruction. That's what you'd say, right? You wouldn't tell the person that, hey, for the first bottle in the fridge, can you do this? For the second bottle in the fridge, can you do this? You just tell them, hey, for every item in this fridge, right? I want you to 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 carry out this instruction, right? Now, this is the exact same thing with how the for loop works, right? It's even the same type of language, right? What's the nice thing about Python is it's a very logical type of programming language, right? So in Python, right? If let's say from the example that they give here, right? You know, you notice that when you look at this example, right, you notice that I mean, you have a list of fruits, right? And this person wants to print out every fruit. Let me undo that. Wants to print out every fruit, right? But instead of having to, create a print function for every fruit, they just use this keyword for. For is the actual keyword in Python. So for, right? For, right? And then they say X. Now you're probably wondering, what is this X, right? So as I mentioned before from the previous example with the fridge, right? You notice that when I said for every item in the fridge, right? Every item in the fridge, this every item in the fridge, right? It's not really exactly the name of these different things in the fridge, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but let me say it in another way that this X you see here, yeah, this X you see here basically means every item, right? It's a variable, right? The reason why it's an X, I mean, it can be anything actually. It doesn't only have to be, it doesn't only have to be an X. But the language for this is that what you do is you tell Python, right? For this is a keyword, and then you come up with a variable name, right? The reason you come up with a variable name is that if you let's say have another loop within the loop, it's easier to for the computer to be able to understand which loop you're referring to. I'll give you an example where I explain all this. So yeah, so what you do first is you say, hey, for every item you just give it a name. So we just call it X, right? In is another keyword in Python, in, and then you mention the name of the list, right? So if you notice from this example, the name of the list I was talking about was the fridge, right? So for every item in the fridge, do this. For here, the name of the list is fruits, right? So for X in fruits, right? And then they say do this instruction, right? Now you notice that, let me just clear all this. You notice that after they do this, right? They say print X, right? And you're probably wondering what does that mean, right? So how the computer reads this, right? As I mentioned before, when you say X, like every item, this becomes X, right? Now also this becomes X, and now also this becomes X. So when Python is running, it will basically count how many items are in this list that you've set, right? And then, okay, let's say there are 5. So it will run this thing 5 times. So what it will do in the first time, this would be the first X. The second time, this would be the second X. The third time, this would be the third X, and so on and so on. But this is not only for lists actually. There's a wide application for this. You can let me clear this, clear all. Yeah, you can actually use this for a lot of things. You can use it for lists, as seen in the example. I don't know how to pronounce this thing, a tuple, whatever you call it, a dictionary, a set, or a string. So as long as you have a list of things, so you see in this example, they use banana as a string. And also, by the way, I should mention that you don't always have to like put a variable here, right? So if you notice from the previous example, I said that you write for for X in fruits, right? In fruits, it doesn't only have to be like a variable. It doesn't have to refer to another variable. You can say for X and actually have your list right here. Have your list right here, right? But the concept here is that whatever you put here, right, it has to have a sequence of different of not different but of characters or whatever it is in your list, right? Yeah, so let me give you an example, a real, let's say a real world example, right, of how this can be applied. An example from scratch, right? So let's say I have a list of students, names of students. Wait, just give me a second. Right, yeah, so I was saying, let me just clear this. Just give me a second. Clear all. Alright, so I've written it down. So let's say you have a list of different customer names, customers, and you basically want to have a list of, to print out their initials, right? So B, J, J, M, right? You want to print out all the initials, right? I mean, these are just like 4, but imagine, let's say you have a list of like 2,000 of these or something like that, and you want to basically print out all the initials of your customers, right? So to print out, 2,000. Yeah, so to print out, okay, let me continue this in the next video since It's almost 10 minutes. But yeah, I'll continue this in the next video.